Hello and welcome to the Unmasked podcast. On today's podcast, the very first podcast that we have ever done into the Clarity Men's community, we have my good friend, Kevin Young. Kevin, you are so welcome on the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Delighted, Monty. Delighted to be your first. It's it's an honor and a privilege, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations. We have always had fascinating and stimulating and sometimes head scratching conversations that have had tears and depth and width and substance. So I would imagine that this conversation, if our previous ones are anything to go by, will be really interesting. So thank you.
Just for so any men out there listening, Kev and I go back, I don't know how many years now, but a good lot of years, and we've went on a big, I guess, learning journey in the whole helping profession, and Kev would be my go-to person in terms of, well, I guess lots of different areas in terms of my own journey as a person in life. And we all have our ups and downs in life and need that help and support. And Kev's been a great support and a great friend, and a great listener, and a man of wisdom as I was going through my hardest times over the past, I guess, 3 years now. And the journey that Kev's went on, I'll let Kevin talk about his journey, obviously. But it's fascinating how open Kevin is to expanding and growing and learning, and his own sense of being in this world, and the peace and the compassion will be a word that'll come out a few times, I'm sure, as we talk, that Kev shows to people and to himself is absolutely amazing. It blows me away. And every time you have a conversation with Kevin, you walk away just feeling a little bit lighter. And I'm sure this conversation, and you guys out there will walk away feeling a little bit lighter as a result of what Kev has to share. I just realised, Kev, I keep on bouncing between calling you Kev and Kevin. I don't know what that's about, but sure.
That kind of happens for me. I bounce between calling me Kevin. So that's probably where you picked it up from, because I would call myself Kev and call myself Kevin and sign my emails Kev and sign my emails Kevin. So
yeah,
I'm good with both.
Excellent. So in terms of, for the listeners, Kev, tell us a little bit about I'm kind of laughing because I was going to say, who are you? Tell us about who you are, right? And I know I start my retreats with this question, and I know this is a question that we've asked each other before in the past, and it's went deep really quick. So tell us about the things that you do and your family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that initial question, who are you? I can immediately feel my head both imploding, reducing to a singularity, and expanding to ultimate consciousness all at the same time with that question. And people ask it all the time, and I'm like, so yeah, it's easier to tell you about the things that I do and what I get up to, and I suppose the approach I have to my work and stuff. So I am 47 years of age. I'm married now 17 years, and two beautiful daughters who are 18 and 16. And I suppose, Andy, that's probably first and foremost role that I fulfill in life. I'm a husband and a father, and that's comes with, you'll know yourself, that comes with its joys and its struggles, its challenges. And like everybody else, I have joys and I have challenges in those spheres, being a husband and being a father. Of course I do. I am a lover of music. So what tickles my pickle, I suppose, is that I'm a lover of music. I like to create music. I like to share music, buy music, listen to music, go to live gigs, read about music. Nothing I like better than headphones in and in a record shop looking at records, listening to something and looking at stuff at the same time. So that's what I do to relax and enjoy myself, and all sorts of music from Americana and roll to ambient, consciousness developing. Consciousness developing music. I really love that. And then for my work, I work as a helper, and I suppose at the bottom of my emails, I work primarily with compassionate inquiry, which is a modality of therapy, I suppose, designed by Dr. Gabor Mate. And within that, I see private clients. I see clients in my office and help people with all sorts of struggles: addiction, depression, anxiety, relationship, behavioral patterns, all sorts of stuff that they're trying to just straighten out for themselves or understand in themselves. And I am a compassionate inquiry practitioner. I am a compassionate inquiry facilitator. So I teach in the school that I learned in. I now teach new students coming through that. I am a compassionate inquiry circle leader, where we do online group therapy sessions, kind of stuff. And I'm a compassionate inquiry educator, where I will go out to organizations, charities, even corporates, and deliver a short version of the compassionate inquiry course over like 20 weeks to team members. And these might be helping professions: therapists, yoga teachers, counselors, psychotherapists, doctors, professors, of course. Or it might be a team of corporates who are trying to introduce compassionate culture into their workplace to help with staff retention, sickness, face conflict, supplier and customer relationship building, and that type of stuff. And I suppose, Vente, that probably what I would like to address myself as is a spiritual and an emotional mentor. If I could call myself that, a spiritual and an emotional mentor, that would probably sum up what I do. So those three areas: my family, my music and creativity, and my work, probably sum up 99% of my time. So time outside of that is reading lots of books, like watching snooker on the telly.
I never knew that about you. There you go. A bit of snooker.
Mate, I love watching the snooker. I love watching the snooker. And yeah, that's about it. That's a simple, fairly streamlined way of living my life, and don't have too many complications in there.
So I'm interested and curious about. Well, there's a couple of directions I'd love to go in. I want to get a sense of, the Kevin, your journey as, I guess, as a man growing up, and what led you into this line of work. So I'm interested in getting there, and I'm interested also in probably diving into this section first, which is what is a spiritual and emotional mentor? How would you describe that? What is that?
Great question. I would describe that, Vinty, as someone who creates a space for others to be able to inquire into their place in the world. You know, where do I fit in? Purpose, alignment. You know, where do I fit in as a spiritual being? You know, what is it all about? You know, who am I? That question. You know, that type of thing. So helping people get that a little bit straight for themselves, and that's not advising. You know, that, like I say, that's creating a space where we can inquire into that without judgment, without the need to be right or wrong, no good or no bad. And then so creating that space for people to discover that about themselves or uncover that about themselves. And then the emotional side of things. So where do I fit in within my relationships? You know, my relationships to myself, to my family, to my colleagues, to my work. What triggers me? Why do I respond or react the way I do in certain situations? Why do I get angry? Why do I isolate myself? Why do I be attracted to some people and repelled by other people? Why do I attract and repel other people? So helping people to inquire, again, creating that space for people to notice things about themselves. I've noticed that when I'm in this situation, I always do that. I wonder why that is. So yeah, that to me, that's what a spiritual and an emotional mentor is. Someone who creates a compassionate, non-judgmental, supportive space for people to ask themselves big questions.
You said there's something that you made a distinction, and I know, you know, I feel like it's a really crucial and important distinction around the idea of discovering and uncovering. So you were saying there are people discovering themselves, or you said, or uncovering who they really are. I find that really fascinating, that idea, because I think in maybe mainstream helping industry and coaching, it's the idea of becoming or discovering who you are, and you use this distinction of uncovering, and I find that really intriguing. So can you tell us a wee bit more about that distinction and what it is and what it means for you and your work?
Yeah. What it means when I begin to work with someone, Binti, there are a couple of things that I align myself with before we even start. One is that I have complete faith in my ability to hold that space for someone to find out about themselves. And two, I have complete certainty in someone's ability to be themselves. So those two things are really true for me. Now, for that to happen, certainly for the second one, holding that space for someone to be themselves, I believe that self, that being, it is already there. So we're not building it, we're not making it, we're not creating it, we're not adding to it. What we're doing is uncovering it. We're there to let it come to the fore. You know, so it's already there. That this thing that we're looking for and searching for and doing all our work for and reading our books about and taking mentorship around, for me, that's already there. So that uncovering is getting below all the shit that we've piled on top of it. And that's probably something that will come later in our conversation, how we build in these adaptive behaviors and protective behaviors and addictions and substances and rules, how we put all these on for good reason as well. We'll talk about that as well. We put all these on top of that being, that thing that is already there. And it's, I think it's our responsibility as human beings to uncover that original being that is always there, has always been there, and will always be there. So that's why I use that, the distinction of uncovering, and it also as well, for me, a big part of my work is ensuring that I create that environment that gives people self-determination, autonomy, responsibility, ownership. Like I say, that I'm not any sort of guru, or I don't have any sort of God delusion where I am creating these beings. That's well above my pay grade. And that's really important that I create the space to and ensure that someone knows that you are there. We just need to help you uncover it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense from my perspective. It's quite similar to how I approach my work, in terms of how I view the clients and the men within the community, is that they're all, from my perspective and my understanding, they're already fully whole, fully there, fully alive, filled with wisdom and love and courage and beauty and all of those things that we so desire in life. It's already there in abundance, but there's things that have got piled on top that have got in the way of us, experiencing that or feeling that, or we forget that. We forget our essential nature, who we really are at our core. And I love that idea where you're talking about, that idea of it's like coming. I guess the words got put into my head as you were talking was, it's like coming back home. It's coming back home to yourself, to your truest sense of beingness. And I guess is this type of work. I guess the thing going in my head is, this type of work must be really challenging, to help someone dig deep to find that part of themselves that's been covered up. And I'm also wondering then, in terms of your work, I guess I'm already getting into that how question, like, how do you take someone on that journey? So one question, I guess, is what do people come to you with? Do they come to you with that question of, I don't know who I am and I need to figure that out? Or do they come to you with certain issues and burdens in your life and you're guiding them in that direction? How does it work? How does it pan out? What do people come to you with, I guess, is my starting question.
Yeah, let's just hold that question. So what do people come with? And let's nip back to what you said at the start. You said that this work must be very challenging. And people say that to me all the time. And the answer to that is no, it's not. People ask me, how do I sit with problems all day? How can I be bothered listening to people all day, that with their problems and their issues? And, that's not what I'm about. I don't hear problems and issues. I sit with potential. I am, my job is a privilege. I sit with complete potential, and the deeper and darker of a place that somebody is, the greater potential they have, so yeah, excuse me, the deeper and darker that it seems for someone, that's greater potential. That's more privilege for me, so it's not a challenge at all. When I first started doing my job, I know that when it's a challenge, I'm not doing it right. When it's a challenge, I'm in the way, because when I'm doing it right, and we'll talk about right, but when I'm doing it right, it is an absolute breeze. It's a breeze. It is the most joyous, fulfilling.
So
Was
if
a wee bit sticky there.
you're saying there, if you have a challenging client, you're not in that process properly. So what is the way to be properly in that process? What's going on inside of you to be able to create that space, to find that place of ease, that place of connection and flow that you're hinting towards? Like, what's going on?
Hopefully, Finty, what is going on is absolutely nothing. To be present, because if something's going on, then I've got an agenda. Some part of me has shown up that I want to fix or rescue or be smart or teach or sound clever or whatever. If something's going on, if there's any tension in my body at all, if there's something happening in my body at all, or maybe there's fear, then I need to address that. I need to keep some of my awareness, some of my attention on myself to see what's showing up for me. So to get into that space, there should be nothing going on. I should be at peace, calm, present, not thinking of what somebody said 5 minutes ago, not thinking about what I'm going to say in 5 minutes' time. I should be present and attuned, and meeting that person exactly where they are. So if that's not happening, I just need to check in with that. So what am I trying to do here? What's going on for me here? Am I trying to fix this person? Am I trying to show off? Am I trying to sound clever? Am I trying to rescue them? Am I trying to take their pain away? Because I shouldn't be doing any of those things. That's not to say I'll put myself on any pedestals here. That's not to say that sometimes I don't notice that I am doing that. That these things are creeping in, and just keeping an eye on yourself, thinking, hang on, what's going on here? And then you asked me, so what do people come to me with? And what people come with is symptoms of a disconnect from themselves.
Okay, let's say that again and we'll let that sink in. That's profound. Go ahead.
So what people present to me are symptoms of being disconnected from themselves. So when someone is disconnected from themselves or selves, from their self, they will present with symptoms. Anger, addiction, not getting on at work, behavioral patterns, always ended up with the wrong partner, physical illness. So yeah, what people present are the symptoms of the core issue, which is that they're not connected to themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when people come to you, just say I come to you and I have this extreme overwhelm going on, and maybe some of the issues, I'm calling them issues in my life, is that I'm not able to sleep, I'm not able to focus, do my work properly. It's impacting my relationships. You're saying there are symptoms of some sort of disconnection to self, to my
Yeah,
core. Okay.
yeah. That that's what I'm saying. And for very good reason. There will be a very good reason why you're not connected to yourself.
This
This
is,
is
I'd be really curious to unpack this, because a lot of the guys that I work with, are in a place in their life where they're starting to ask some of those bigger questions, perhaps that they haven't asked before, because for various reasons they've put the head down, they've got on with life, they've went and got the job and got married, and maybe did what culture and society or parents thought that they should do. And a lot of the guys I work with are kind of waking up and going, hold on, like life doesn't feel as good as I think it should be right now. What's going on? What's happening? I've lost my sense of who I am. In fact, I don't even know who I am. And I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed and I'm working too much. And there's a lot going on for them. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of symptoms. How does how does somebody become disconnected in the first place then from the self? So if that's the core issue, how does that happen? How do you become disconnected in the first place?
It's an adaptive behavior. So somewhere along the way, usually in early childhood, I'll actually read you a wee something in a second or two, but usually in early childhood, someone has learned that their self, this beautiful being that they are, there's something wrong with it. So they're too loud, too quiet, too talkative, not talkative enough. They're too big, they're too small. They're a nuisance. They get in the way. They're an annoyance. That somewhere they will have learned that they are not acceptable. So what they then do is they cover up that unacceptableness and hide it away. And that is the disconnection from themselves. They have hidden away this thing that somewhere they from someone, and not always, people don't always do this on purpose. They're not always told that they're unacceptable on purpose, but through environment, emotional attachment, uh, their parents, society, school, whatever, they have learned that to be you, to be Venti, is not okay. So they think, okay, well, I better be something else. I better not be me.
Is that like showing a certain part of my personality? Or is that like I feel like to be fully me? I guess I'm at what, yeah, is it like I shut down my full identity or is it like just a part of my identity gets closed and shut away? So for example, the loudness thing kind of struck me, I don't know why, but like if I was really loud as a child and as a young child, and I keep being reprimanded for that, and there's a physical disconnection then from my mum, for example. And as a child, I want to always have that connection. So I learn being loud is a bad thing. So I decide then, that's a bad part of my personality. So I'm going to be quiet from here on in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it probably works a little bit deeper than that, because children don't learn. Children, that's a very wise intellectual uh, explanation you're putting around that. Children don't really learn that. What they just really learn is, I am bad. I am unacceptable. That's what the child learns. It's usually a bigger thing for them, and they then learn these adaptive behaviors. For me to get close to my mum, I need to behave in this way, because the love that I'm getting from her is conditional. So if I behave
Mhm.
in this way, she seems to love me. or my dad, or whoever it is. If I behave in this way, I get attention. That's an adaptive behavior. That's learned. You know, we then we then learn to make out the environment. A child learns very quickly, and this is about the psychology of human beings. The child learns very quickly how to stay attached in the environment that they're in. They give up their authenticity for the sake of attachment, because the single most important thing for a child is to stay attached. Because if they don't, they die. You know, that's what happens to a baby, to a young child, to a human being. If it doesn't stay attached, it dies. So it will give up its authenticity, its truth, to enable that attachment relationship to stay there. And that's that disconnect from self. I can't be me, otherwise I'm at risk of dying. So I'll not be me to keep me alive. That's what our organism does. That's not a choice. That's not, you know, that's human psychology. That's neuroscience. That's biology. This organism that we call the human body is so good at self-preservation that it will give up its authenticity, its uniqueness, its special quirks and eccentricities to stay alive, to stay attached. So yeah, that's usually what happens. And then we learn those adaptive behaviors, you know, people pleasing, and there's a whole myriad of other symptoms come out of that. Because if we don't have that emotional attachment, then certain parts of our brain don't develop properly. So, you know, we have our amygdala, our hippocampus in our reptilian brain that don't develop properly without attachment, without attunement, and emotional attunement and nurturing, and to be seen and to be heard. So parts of us actually don't develop properly. And then to compensate for that, we will move into different coping behaviors, strategies, survival mechanisms. And they're all just symptoms. They're all just symptoms of that disconnect from self.
So when you go on that inward journey that you bring people on, and you begin to unravel and I guess unpack and I guess meet that child that made that decision to preserve itself, to look after itself. When you go on that journey and you see the issue and the problem for what it really was and what it really is, then there's a sense of release then from that. And I guess I'm speaking that out because that's what I experienced. You know, you've worked with me in the past and you've brought me on that journey of meeting the younger Venti that made a decision to love itself and to protect itself and to keep that attachment alive so I could essentially stay alive. And my experience was, once I understood that, and it's not even a head and an intellectual thing, it's a feeling thing. Once I felt into that and felt the pain of the child and what the child needed at that time, and how myself as an adult can now take control and give the child what it needs, then there was a huge, big sense of release and relief, and healing that took place from that inner journey.
Exactly. And we could sum that all up in one sentence, Vindy, and say the point of the work that I do is to bring people into in the present self. So when we understand, oh, the reason that I do this is because of that, and now I'm not in that situation anymore, And I said I'll read you something. I'll read it just when I finish talking. Because I'm not in that situation anymore, I don't need to do this anymore. So we're inviting people to come into their in the present self. Say, that thing I'm doing, it was a real service to me. It was a real useful strategy then, but now I don't need to do it anymore because I'm not then, I'm now. So this is about bringing people into their in the present self and realizing that they don't have to cover that shame. They don't have to protect themselves from lack of attachment, because many people might think that if they lost attachment, something grave and terrible would happen. Yeah, it might. You might be sad for a day or two if you lost a friend or lost a family member, because you didn't like how they were treating you. But you'll survive. Like most of us can still make beans and toast and a cup of tea. You'll be all right. But to the part of us that learned how dangerous that would be to not be attached, that wasn't all right. Whereas now it is. Yeah, you might grieve a little bit. You might be sad. You fall out with that person. The relationship breaks up. Yeah, it'll be terrible. Yeah, it will. It'll be sad and there'll be grief, but you'll be fine. You will survive. You'll survive. Can I read you a wee thing? Would that be okay?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Tiny chat. Find this. But I only I'm reading this book because I wanted to read something light and different from the other sort of stuff that I read. And it's called My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolt Taylor. And she was a neuroanatomist, so she's a brain scientist, a really, really high-flying brain scientist. But at the age of 36, she had a stroke. And she's talking about her experience of pre-stroke, stroke, and healing from stroke. And it's a lot about neuroscience and the brain and stuff, and this stuff just really floats my boat, tickles my pickle, But early on in the book, she's describing just how the brain works, what happens, different hemispheres, what is responsible for what, and what does what job, and et cetera, et cetera. And in this little part really fascinated me with the work that I do. She's talking about the limbic system. And I'm sure you and other people will have heard of that have heard that word mentioned before, the limbic system. And in the limbic system, there is the amygdala, which looks after fear and rage. There is the hippocampus, which looks after learning and memory. So these are all just little parts of this right at the back of your brain, like walnut sized thing in the back of your brain. And she says, the limbic system functions by placing an affect or emotion on the information streaming in through our senses. Okay, so as we stand here and look around, you'll feel temperatures, touch, smell, taste, body movement. You just scratched your neck there, So as that stuff is coming into our brain, it goes through the limbic system first. So before it even gets to it's called the prefrontal cortex, before it even gets to the part of our brain where we're thinking about it, and we haven't even thought about it yet, it has been processed by this little thing at the back of our brain, which goes, stamps it with an affect or an emotion. Then it comes to the prefrontal cortex, where we start thinking about it, making decisions and planning things and, all that sort of stuff. So the stuff hasn't even got to be thought about yet before it's had a little imprint. Yeah. Because we share these structures with other creatures, the limbic system cells are often referred to as the reptilian brain or the emotional brain. I'm sure we've heard that, the reptilian brain. We've heard that sort of stuff. Really important. When we are newborns, these cells become wired together in response to sensory stimulation. So after we are born, the thing that makes this limbic system grow, its fertilizer or its food, is sensory stimulation, emotional stimulation, eye contact, touch, being nurtured, the smell of breath are the things that are the fertilizer to make this little thing grow. That's what makes it grow. It's not sunshine, it's not water, it's not anything, it's not tea, it's sensory stimulation. Now, to have sensory stimulation, what we need are caregivers who are not stressed, not addicted, emotionally attuned, present, and without mental illness. So not stressed, not addicted. Most people will think of their parents and think, my parents were stressed. But one of them was, and when I say addicted, it doesn't have to be heroin, addicted to work, addicted to food, addicted to mobile phone, whatever, addicted to exercise, addicted to people pleasing. So it gets wired together in response to sensory stimulation, which must come from unaddicted, unstressed primary caregivers who are attuned, present, with no mental health issues. It is interesting to note that although our limbic system functions throughout our lifetime, so it's operational from cradle to grave, it's happening, yeah, it does not mature. As a result, when our emotional buttons are pushed, we retain the ability to react to the incoming stimulation as though we were a 2-year-old, even though we are adults. And I always caveat that by saying, this isn't new age, hippie, tree hugging, incense burning waffle. This is from Jill Bolt Taylor, PhD, brain scientist, revered brain scientist. The part of our brain that this information comes into first is our limbic system, and it's always operating at a child level. So what does that mean to us? When we haven't yet developed the capacity to recognize how we feel in a certain situation, we will respond to that from the emotional maturity of a child. So like getting triggered, she says when our emotional buttons are pushed, that's getting triggered. They forgot to put milk in my tea. I'm now angry and I'm going to start a row because my wife, my husband, my partner, my boyfriend, forgot to put milk in my tea. That is responding from the limbic part of our brain. Until we can say, hang on, something seems to be happening here for me because my missus or husband didn't put milk in my tea. I wonder what that is. Can I come into my in the present self and decide whether I am pissed off or not? Is it a big deal or not? And Vinty, most of the population are operating from that limbic system. They haven't yet learned to engage their in the present self in their decision making. So what then happens is people believe that this is just the way I'm angry, I'm a people pleaser. No, you're not. That's a learned behavior, probably before you were 4 years old, that you're still repeating in your life right now. So when we engage our in the present self, we get to be response able. We get to be responsible or able to respond. How would I like to respond to the situation where my wife, husband, partner hasn't put milk in my tea? How would I like to respond to that? Could I say, could you pass me the milk, love? could I go to the fridge and get it myself? Or do I go, I'm going to swear there, for F's sake, what, you never put milk in my tea,
Yeah.
I'm pissed off now, so yeah, I've probably been speaking there quite a lot. There's probably quite a lot of
The
information.
thing that I find
I get
fascinating with the whole, like the conditioning process and the triggers that happen in our lives, is how real it feels that it's someone else's fault. I just find
completely.
that so, it's fascinating how many times I can, lose my temper, blame someone else for what's happening emotionally within me, but it feels like it is someone else doing something to me,
Yeah.
you know. And
And do you know why that is?
well, I was going to ask you, can you elaborate and explain why that might be? Why does it feel so real that when what you're describing there is, it's an inner thing that's going on that's connected to childhood and the reptilian brain and its formation. And so yeah, why does it feel so real?
The reason well, first of all, the reason it feels real is because the emotion is real. Okay, so we never, ever, ever argue with someone's emotion. I feel angry. I'm not going to say, no, you don't. I feel sad. No, you don't. I feel angry. Okay, so you feel angry. Let's look at why you feel angry. What is your perception of what is happening? Now, something else that we do is that when we have that anger, that charged emotion, let's call it whatever it is, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, whatever it is, the first way of dealing with that charged emotion is what we call drama, reactive projection. I feel this thing and I reactively project it out into the world so that this thing of mine can get the attention that it needs that I have not yet developed the capacity to give myself. So when I don't know how to take care of that emotion, I throw it out into the world, hoping that the world will take care of that emotion. That's why. So it is, the emotion that you're feeling is real. So we're not saying anyone is not real. The emotion that you feel is real. The reason that you feel the emotion usually isn't real.
And it's not the person or the thing that has done it to you.
Oh, I forgot that is put milk in your tea.
Yeah, that's
Or
neutral.
forgot to give you a lift, or yeah, or forgot to give you a lift, or give you what you thought was a dirty look, or told you to f off. That's all they've done. There's a funny thing on TV that I was watching Dave Gorman, and he was saying that he was chatting about, and beautifully put, in the work that I do. He was driving in Spain, and he cut in front of someone, and he said the person pulled up beside a Spanish guy and wound down the window and shouted at him, "Your mother's a whore," in Spanish, right? And Dave Gorman is a comedian, and of course he said, "No, she's not." He says, what that person was trying to do was just annoy me. He says, the person might have well have wound down the window and said, "I'm trying to annoy you."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So when the person forgets to put milk in your tea, or calls you an F and B, or says your mother's a whore, or whatever, if we can engage that mature part of us, in the present self, we can go, "No, she's not. She's not a her." Or they just forgot to put milk in the tea, or they're angry. That's why they said that nasty thing to me. It's nothing to do. It's nothing to do with me.
So it's almost like when we're triggered or when we're when we're in that reactionary mode, those kind of patterns that we get in of reacting to things aggressively or walking away or huffing, whatever it might be, that, you know, that person or that situation or that thing is almost like a gift, because it's an invitation. The way looking at it and seeing it is, it's an invitation to see parts of you inside that are not yet healed or not yet explored. Or does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Michael Brown, another author, he calls it the messenger. He
Hmm.
says, dismiss the messenger and get the message. Eckhart Tolle says, be at least as interested in what's happening inside of you as to the experience outside. But we're not. We haven't been taught to attune to and attend to this emotion that's inside us. We just haven't been taught it. We haven't learned to go, oh, that's really interesting. I seem to be really angry because that Spanish dude said my mother is a whore,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever,
Yeah.
my wife forgot to put milk in my tea. I seem to be really angry about that. I wonder
Yeah.
what that's all about.
Yeah. I remember back when probably in my teenage years, the space between reacting and responding for me was really small. I would have I would have had a lot of anger and aggression, and I would have probably had on the facade. Could have been in a situation and looked all nice and calm, like an example of peace, But on the inside, there was this just rage bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling.
Mhm.
But like I could just go from 0 to 100 like really, really quickly, and sometimes over like the most insignificant things. And I think particularly as a teenager, I wouldn't have been very good at speaking about how I felt or what was going on for me. And would have saw emotions not as something scary, but it's just something that is there and you deal with on your own. And I guess the reality was the stuff that I went through as a child, I was carrying a lot of guilt and hurt and anger and shame and all sorts of stuff. And it was coming out in loads of different ways as a teenager, and anger being one of them. And just when you're talking about triggers, I'm going, gosh, there's so many times I can remember where the this there felt like there was no space to be able
Mhm.
to choose something differently. Um, and I know as well with some of the guys that I'm working with and some of the conversations we've had, some of them feel the same way, where it's just like, you know, their button has been pushed and it feels like there's no choice. They just explode, or they just go into whatever pattern it is that soothes them. And so how do how do you how do you get to a place? I know there's lots in this, in terms of being a man as well and emotions, and maybe you could speak to that a little bit too, Kev, around. I know this is a generalization, and I think there's some truth in it that as men, we can be afraid of our own feelings, or there's certain feelings that we feel like we can show, and others that we're afraid or are told, we can't. And what does that do? What's that do to somebody who can't be human and show a whole array of emotion? Um, and how do you actually get to a place where you can create space between that reacting and responding, so you can have a place to choose? Um, and I remember when you were first starting off on, the compassion inquiry journey. Um, you used to say, so I think if you said it already on this podcast, if you were triggered by something, you'll learn to go, That's interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so how can you expand that place between reacting and responding?
Great question, Vindy. Vindy, could I just go back first and just
Yeah,
mention something you
please.
talked about? So you talk about men in particular, and we've been taught and learned society, family, toxic masculinity, marketing, whatever, all of those things, that there are certain emotions we can and can't show. So that's true. So when we have an emotion that we can't show, then what do? We have to do something else. So when we can't show shame or sadness, probably show anger. So we have to do something. Do you know what I mean? Our body has experienced something. We've been conditioned to believe that we can't show it. So something else happens. So if you make me, if something makes me sad or angry in work or whatever, and I can't show it, I'll swallow it, I'll bury it, and the person, who happens to drive in front of me on the way home will get called all sorts of names. Or my kids, when I go in the door, will get it, both barrels, because the thing that happened to me earlier on in the day wasn't able to be expressed. Or I'll decide that probably the best thing to do is stop off in the pub on the way home and drink 6 pints, whatever that might be, so that's the first thing. It is true that we've been conditioned that we can't show some emotions, but they need out. They're going to work out somewhere. They may also eventually work out in physical illness and mental illness. So when we keep swallowing and eating these emotions that we've been told we're not to show, that makes us ill, and that's fact. That's science.
Tell us a wee bit more about that, Kev, because I love that. It sounds wrong to say I love that, but this we're not taught how emotions impact the body, and repressed emotions, how they are stored and are held in the body, and what it does over a long a long or short period of time. But how, for people on the podcast, like, how can an emotion, how does it impact the body? Like, what's going on there?
Again, great question, Benny. And we'll come to that space question. We didn't answer that. Just how do we create space?
Yeah.
So, and we'll make this, a fairly simplistic answer, in that we are an organism, and we should be at homeostasis. We should be at equilibrium. Everything working as it should. All things happening as they should. To be healthy, that's what it is to be healthy and wholesome. To be at equilibrium. But the activation of emotions creates reactions in our body, chemical or otherwise. But probably the major one is that when we get stressed or in fear or anger, we're producing cortisol and adrenaline. But cortisol, most of all, cortisol is meant to quick shoot into your body so that when the saber-toothed tiger came into the cave, you jumped out of the cave. That's what cortisol was meant to do. When you're in danger, you reacted to that danger. Now, the lives that we live now, we are constantly stressed, constantly worried, people suffering lots of anxiety, which creates chronic cortisol release into our system. And again, we have thousands of studies to show what cortisol does to your muscles, your blood, your digestive system, your skeletal system, your nervous system, your brain. So this chronic cortisol poisoning, because that's what's happening. We're poisoning ourselves with our own internal chemicals, cortisol and adrenaline. And we know we know for a fact that children that grow up in stressful environments have a higher suffering of asthma, for example. And even if we take areas of high air pollution, in areas of high air pollution, lots of kids have asthma, but there is a higher percentage of kids that have grown up in a stressed environment, even in those areas, have asthma. So I mean, pollution has stuff to do with it, but the greatest factor is stress. We know that people who suffer stress and have high levels of cortisol in their body have a higher dispensation to rheumatoid arthritis, because cortisol inflames your muscles and inflames your joints, so you get arthritis. We know that women who are subject to high areas of high levels of stress have present with higher levels of breast cancer and ovarian cancers. We know that people that have high levels of stress suffer more with irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's. We even know how it works. The little tears in our digestive system, which happen naturally, like little tears, and then they heal and tear and heal and tear and heal. That happens naturally. But when there's high levels of cortisol in there, it stops that healing process. So these little natural tears happen in our intestines, but they don't heal because there's lots of cortisol in there. It stops it from healing. So that's just a couple of examples of how stress, anxiety, fear, anger create illness, physical illness in our bodies.
Trauma then, I know for this other question come back to, but I'm sure we'll swing back to it naturally at some point. As you're talking now, I'm thinking about past trauma then. So I'm thinking about even my own childhood and seeing a lot of violence as a child, and the traumatic experience that was as a child. And as a child, does that switch on the fight or flight response and put me in a place of in heightened stress? And
it does. Other modalities talk about our window of tolerance, where things are, that's what that thing when we're normal, for want of a better word, when things are as they should be, there's a window of tolerance. When we go outside that window of tolerance, we know that we're creating hypo or hyper alertness in our body. So when you are witness to a lot of trauma, so when you're witness to a lot of trauma or lots of things that should have happened to you didn't, that will put you into a state of hyper or hypotension. You're on alert. You're on high alert all the time. Danger, and you're constantly scanning for danger. When you're constantly scanning for danger, your body is going, there's going to be danger. Cortisol, in case we have to run, in case we have to move quick, we need cortisol in the system. So yes, exactly. When you have had traumas in your early childhood, your body will respond by your autonomic nervous system is in hyper alert. It sees danger where there is none, because it just perceives that the world is a dangerous place, because that's how you've been conditioned. And yeah, the answer to that is yes.
So then, as a child, am I more predisposed to stress because I've went through that trauma? Is my nervous system more on alert than somebody that maybe hasn't experienced that trauma? Like, I'm trying to understand, as a child, is it waves of being in a stress response and then you're coming back down, or are you constantly in a stress response? How's that work?
You're at a higher level of stress. Once, remember what I read from Jill Bolt Taylor, this little amygdala at the back of the brain, and as the stuff's coming in, it's getting a stamp of emotion on that. That's what's happening. That's what's happening inside you. So as you look around at things, somebody else might see a crowd of people and go, "Oh, there's a crowd of people," and somebody else might see a crowd of people and go, "Shit, there's a crowd of people." Do you know what I mean? And Vindy, when we think about us, we're both similar age. We come from Northern Ireland, similar backgrounds, grew up in places where, you know, you were just the time, you know, who are they? What are they? What are they? You know, where am I? Who are they? What's going on? You know, alert, 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 alert. And the dangerous thing, then, Vindy, is that we have normalized that. That's how it was for us. So we don't even know that we're in a state of high alert because we've always been in a state of high alert. This is just how it is. You know, this is the level of stress that I operate at.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was.
It's so interesting you saying that, because it's only actually in the past 3 years that I've realized and looked back in my life that I have been operating in that high alert position without even noticing, because that's just how I did life. I did life feeling on edge and anxious and nervous about people and situations and things. That you know, it's that idea that, you know, that's who I was. That's who I. You know, people say that's just who I am. You've already touched on that. And
can I mention a couple of things, Vindy, there just before we move on? So couple of things then. So when you're living in that state of high alert because of where we're from, background you've had, and parents who weren't emotionally attuned, and that's not to blame our parents, because think of what they were living through as well, you know. So what is a good way then, or what are the good ways then to try and manage that state of high alert? Get drunk, get high, you know, eat, gamble, shop, you know. There are ways to try to manage to suppress that state. And then, you know, the second thing about that is, well, why do I want to put that? So yeah, how we manage it is really, really important. And then, because we're so used to that high state of alert, when we're not in it, we panic. So when we're in a high state of alert and our bodies are producing loads of cortisol and we're poisoning ourselves from the inside out, we're thinking this is normal. Then when we're not in that state of high alert, we're chilled out, we've got nothing to do, we get agitated and anxious. So our body creates a load of cortisol and adrenaline, and we poison ourselves from the inside out. So we've really got, you know, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, because your body is so used to being in that state of high alert, it considers it to be normal. When it's not normal, it's panicking. Mm. So we then drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, eat more food, you know, and even when we're relaxed, we're worried that, you know, I'm concerned that there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. And it's all that, you know, so it's the emotions that we can't show as guys, and the things that we feel like we need to repress, and our emotional, I guess, our upbringing and the trauma that we've experienced that can keep us in that state of alert. And that state of alert, then, you know, what you're talking about there is the cortisol and running through our bodies, and it's the cortisol that's actually doing the damage then, that's bringing on the arthritis, and, you know, it has links to cancer and all that kind of stuff. So and it's fascinating because we live in the most stressed out era probably ever, and there's so many of us walking about, you know, stressed to the max, and that being our normal way of operating and being in the world. And that in and of itself is creating, you know, I guess a feeding ground for illness and sickness then.
Absolutely. which is frightening.
It really
Which is
is. I
frightening.
mean, when Anita was first diagnosed with cancer, and I went on this mighty operation of healing her. I know we chatted about it, chatted about that at that time, where I just went into this, it was panic mode of I have to do something, and I jumped into the books and started reading loads of different things, and the first thing that came up was stress.
Mm-hmm.
The very first thing that I read about in healing cancer was stress, and bringing the body back into homeostasis, and using food to do that, and using techniques to calm the mind, and releasing pain from the past, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's these things that we're not, for whatever reason, we're not taught. You've talked about the importance of presence, and love to get into that as well. What is presence? What do we mean about being present? But we're not taught how we can operate as humans, as people. And I think the more that we can teach people how their mind works, and how their being works, and how we experience the world from the inside out, the more that we can, I guess, back to that idea of being, the more that we can be our authentic self in the world, and live from a place of abundance rather than stress and pressure and overwhelm and all of those kinds of things. So back to that question then of, the reacting and responding. So quite a lot of people, it's normal that something happens, boom, you're triggered, it's someone else's fault. Now we're introducing people to the idea that actually it's an invitation to go inwards, because there's something that needs examined and looked at. How do you get yourself to a place of being less reactive and more responsive?
So the first thing, Venti, is to bring awareness to your reactivity. So to know how that feels. How do I feel when this thing happens? So I would always encourage, because all this stuff that we're talking about, Venti, it's not going on in our head. It's not going on in our thoughts. It's going on in our body. That's where it is, in our bodies. So the first thing is to be able to pay attention to your body. What's happening in my body? And when you notice, people quite often have repeating patterns, that someone will get angry or anxious in their gut, or somebody else will get it in their jaw, or somebody gets it in their shoulders, whatever it is, their toes or hands, their nose, whatever. So to learn yourself, what happens for me just before I shout at my wife or my kids? What is that process for me? It's an individual thing. It might be your pecs go, or your jaw goes, and as soon as you notice that, you say, oh, there's that thing happening. My pecs have just been tight, or my back has spasmed, or my gut has twisted, or so to be able to learn yourself. And this can be done under supervision with someone. It can be really useful to help you to do this. And it can also be done retrospectively. So we can work with someone and say, so describe me having that row with your wife then, what did she say? What did you say? And people very quickly get into the energy of the row, even though it happened yesterday or last week or last month or last year, they very quickly get into the energy of it and say to them, what's happening in your body now? Oh, my gut is gone, or my jaw is tight, and so just bring attention to that. Just notice that. So just be with it. And I like to be quite playful with people and say, so describe the sensation. Oh, my stomach's really tight and it's been somersaults, whatever, can you name an emotion that's present for you? Anger, sadness, shame, disgust, whatever it is. And I invite people then to give that emotion a name. Dog's name, pet's name, nickname, call it Arnie anger, call it Sally sadness, whatever you want, but whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really. But the point of that is to be able that when this thing happens, my pecs have gone and my gut is gone. Say, there's Arnie anger. Arnie anger's here. All right, okay, that's really interesting. Arnie anger is here. And even at that, so already you've given yourself
Space.
Space. You give yourself a couple of seconds there to go, oh, Arnie anger's there. Okay. Let's just notice Arnie anger and to just stay with him. And that's just creating that gap. And what we find is that when we stay with Arnie anger or Sally sadness or whoever it is, when we stay with it for a little while, it kind of simmers a little bit and peters, For me, Venti, one of my first things that I have learned is when I get triggered, shut up. Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Because the next thing that I say is going to be really, really important, so don't say anything, right now, don't say anything, and if anybody says it, you okay? Yeah, just need a minute,
I think that's really like, I'm laughing at that, but like how massively important is that? It's huge, it's huge just to be quiet. Or even, with Anita, when I got triggered, and she was way better in this stuff than I was. But when I got triggered and I was in that kind of frame of mind in the right frame of mind, just put it that way. And I was able at times to be able to say to her, listen, there's a lot going on inside right now. I just need space. And to be able to, and she was gracious enough to go, right, not all the time, but a good lot of the time she was gracious enough to go, not a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. I think in relationships, whether that's with your significant other, whether that's with your children or whoever it might be, to be able to recognize that actually the next thing that potentially could come out of your mouth is, your 4-year-old self or your 2-year-old self screaming or wanting attention or whatever it might be, wanting to be held or heard. And the amount of times that saved an argument,
Yeah.
And I think what it ties back is the word that you used. It's responsibility, your ability to respond. So taking responsibility for your own emotional state and what's going on for you.
Absolutely, Venti. And Venti, to hear you speak about Anita so graciously. Hey, listen, and I know we're not beatifying anybody here. Nobody was a saint. But to hear you speak about her so graciously, because what can sometimes happen there is that if I say to someone, listen, there's just a lot going on inside right now, I don't want to say anything, that can actually trigger the other person. Do you know what I mean? And they make it mean something about them.
Yeah.
So now they're triggered, and if they don't have the wherewithal to be able to say, oh shit, yeah, there's something happening inside me right now too, maybe I shouldn't say something either, unless they have that graciousness with the word you use, Anita, it can get complicated, because quite often we make it mean stuff about us. Because you need to take a moment, I get upset.
Yeah.
And like I say, if I don't have that learning or skill, they will say, listen, he just needs a minute. Nothing really to do with me. My wife just needs a minute. My husband just needs a minute. My kids just need a minute. It's nothing to do with me. I don't need to take that personally. That somebody else needs a moment. Be gracious enough to give them a moment. Because you're right. Then you've got 2 4-year-olds. And how are you going to sort out something in this big adult world when both of you are operating as 4-year-olds? And if that's you and your wife, or you and your partner or husband or whatever, and you have two 4-year-olds or a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, then you've got four 4-year-olds, in the room, and then it's just a shit show.
Yeah. And I think, like, as you're talking there, it's reminded me of when I studied in youth work, we learned about transactional analysis. So it's operating from your adult self, your child self, and some other form of self. But I think it's the choosing to step back. For me, it was reminding me it's a choosing to acknowledge that I am now operating from the child part of me, and I want to come back into my adult self and be able to respond as an aware adult in the situation. So you've taken space. I guess with practice, you become aware of what's happening in your body. You can feel things as they're coming up, the tension or the sensations, whatever's happening. And over time you become more aware of how your body responds in different situations. So you're feeling yourself getting frustrated or angry or whatever it might be, and you decide, I'm going to be quiet here. I need some space. I'm going to be quiet. What happens after that then?
Great. So you realize you've been triggered. You've realized you're angry, for example, using, or fearful, whatever it is. And as I said away ages ago, we will not challenge how anyone is feeling emotionally. So you got angry. Okay, let's just welcome that into the conversation. You're angry. We'll not challenge that. The part that we do work with is, why did you get angry? Because she didn't put tea in my coffee. No, sorry, milk in my coffee. Even if you don't want tea in your coffee.
Yeah, you would get angry if you got tea in your coffee. Excuse me.
So you're angry. Okay, great. Let's just hold space for that. Let's welcome that and here. And you've taken a moment. Now, why did you get angry? And you might say, because she didn't put milk in my coffee. I think, right, hang on. That's not why you got angry. That's what happened. Why did you get angry? Because she didn't put milk in my coffee. No. That's what happened. Because what you could have done is, as I said earlier, oh, she didn't put milk in my coffee. I'll go get out of the fridge and do it myself. So you're asking someone to challenge their perception of why they got angry. What does it mean to them that their wife did put milk in their coffee? And you'll find people will say things like, she never bloody listens to me, or she doesn't look, she never cares about the coffee that I get. So you'll get something like that. So they have got angry at the perception that the person doesn't care. I'm getting angry because I don't get milk in the coffee. They've got angry because they believe or they perceive that this thing has happened. They don't care. They never listen to me, whatever that might be. So we're challenging the perception, not the emotion. What do you believe happened here? And again, this needs to be a very safe space, compassionate space for people to say, well, I believe what happened is that she never listens to me. Okay. And the next question is this the first time that you have got angry because people haven't listened to you? And the answer will always be no. I always get angry when people listen to me. How far back does that go? Oh, forever. It's always been like that. And what we're then learning is that this perception that they have about the milk and the coffee has a big long tail that goes all the way back to some causal point in their childhood. They have always got angry when they perceived that people weren't listening to them. So their defense against people, against the perception of not being listened to, is to get angry. That's their defense mechanism. Okay, so now you understand that when you perceive you're not being listened to, you get angry. We now have some understanding. We now have some insight. We now have some clarity around why this happens. So great. And that's big work to do that. So then we are looking at, what are the other possibilities that your wife didn't put milk in your coffee? What else might have happened? We're out of milk. She forgot. She gave me the wrong cup. The black coffee's her one. She's got the milky. She's coming back to do it. She's away off tea. The million examples of why my wife didn't put milk in my coffee. A million perceptions around it. And understanding that we always choose the one that is most painful.
We
always
always choose the one that's most painful for us.
We always choose the perception that's most painful for us. So out of all those perceptions, she never listens to me. She forgot. She's away for a pee. We're out of milk. She's giving me the wrong cup. Somebody else lifted mine. She's coming back to do it in a while. Out of all of those possibilities, we will always choose the one that is most painful for us.
How come?
Because we're built as human beings to look out for, or to be alert to pain and danger. We always want to move away from pain, and that perception is causing pain. So we just do. And that's one of those things, that's just how it happens. It's just how it happens. So again, this is, we're getting this insight. So when I perceive that people aren't listening to me, what happens for me then is I get angry. Yeah, that's your pattern. You're starting to understand your pattern now. So bringing that understanding and say, so what would you like to do the next time you perceive that someone isn't listening to you? All right, I'm gonna take a few breaths, and I'm gonna really challenge my perception, and I'm gonna see is what I'm believing and perceiving true. Great work. Like there, we're building in loads of space into that reaction. And Findy, it's also important to say that this isn't about being passive about everything. So sometimes somebody can do something that we need to stand up for ourselves. That we need to say, no, hang on, that's
I'm
not
glad you
okay.
said that, Kev, because I'm a thinker, and if I believe something to be true, then what you just explained there, perception is projection, that idea, then I'm thinking everything is perception. And we've talked about this before, with my relationship with my father-in-law, where sometimes I'm thinking about it's always about me, it's always about me, it's always about something within me. But sometimes that in itself can be an avoidance of wanting to enter into express what's going on. Yeah.
And Vindy, the way to look at that is that if our reaction is disproportionate to the event, then it's historical. There's something old going on, if it's disproportionate, and somebody driving out in front of you in traffic, a disproportionate reaction is to get out of your car and start calling them all the names of the day and shaking your fist in the air and throwing stones with their car. That's disproportionate reaction, older stuff. Oh, you're back. Yeah, so a good way of measuring that is just, is my response proportionate to the thing that's and the thing. Can I talk a bit more about that, Findy? I'm just very passionate about this.
Yeah,
and
please.
as I talk,
please.
Yeah. I kind of describe it to my clients sometimes as, if we imagine our emotions like a door wedge. So thin at one end and fat at the other. Emotions are important. Anger's there to let us know that something isn't right. Fear's there to let us know that something isn't right. These things are important. They're meant to be there. But we will get an indication, like at the thin end of the wedge, that something isn't right. And we can address that. We can work with that. We can express that, or we can ignore it. And it will go to a little bit of a fatter bit of the wedge. It'll get a bit louder, it'll get a bit more tense, it'll get a bit more tension in your body, and we can address that, or we can ignore it. And the more we ignore it, the more we don't express our emotions when they're at that small stage, the bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger they get, until we're like about something that doesn't deserve a shout. So learning then to be able to express ourselves at the thin end of the wedge prevents us getting to the fat end of the wedge. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So when someone does something, to be able to say, hey, that's not really that cool. That's not really that cool that you've said that thing. And that's a sure, I like you speaking to me like that. I'd rather you didn't. Learning to say that rather than, that's the effing 12th time that basket has spoken to me like that, and next thing, that's the fat end of the wedge, Yeah. And then there's the whole question: why don't we respond at the thin end of the wedge? Because we've been told not to, we've been conditioned not to. We've learned that responding as children, responding at the thin end of the wedge could lose us the attachment relationship to our primary caregivers. So we've just learned not to do it, and we're then relearning or unlearning how not to do it. Do you know what I mean? So we're learning to respond at that thin end of the wedge. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. It's fine, but express it when it's there rather than when it's there.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the when you were talking about emotions there, you were like emotion, if we're angry, it's our anger needs something, or it's almost like our emotions are a messenger of some description that's asking, it's an invitation, or a request of acknowledgement or something. So how do we get better at I guess how do we get better at feeling our feelings and knowing what our feelings need from us? If we've been so conditioned and shut down from our bodies and our minds and our expression for so long, how do we get better at this?
Venti, can I answer that in a really simple way? The same way that we get better, the same way that we get better at anything. Practice. Start to be in safe environments where you are allowed to feel anger, where you're allowed to feel fear, where you're allowed to feel shame, where it's not being shut down, where it's not being told that it's not okay. And that can be in a group like this when you're working with men, that it's okay to get angry. Know how it feels. Know what it is. This is what anger feels like. This is what shame feels like. This is what fear feels like. This is what sadness feels like. That's okay. That's how to create spaces for yourself and the others around you. That we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to feel our emotions.
I think it's a shift in perspective and a shift in belief. Again, it's another thing that just being around you and being your friend that I've heard you say over and over again, and you've just said it there, which is, it's okay. I'm feeling this. It's okay. It's welcome. And I think that has been a savior of mine over the past 3 years of whatever it is that I've been experiencing and going through and feeling, that I've, you've taught me to welcome that it's okay, it's welcome, whether it's anger or frustration or sadness or guilt, it's welcome. And I think even if the guys in the community are able to take that one thing and and that it's okay to feel and the feelings
Yeah.
are welcome no matter what it is,
Yeah.
then that changes a lot.
Yeah. Completely. Completely. And giving that to each other.
Hmm.
If you're working through, yeah, it's okay to feel that. And then another thing, probably a thing around that is that hopefully, when we were chatting to you and you were going through just the grief of Anita's passing and stuff, that telling you that it's okay to feel it is different from trying to take it away from you. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to rescue you, not trying to fix you, not trying to soothe you, but sitting with you and telling you, Cindy, it's okay to feel this is different from trying to distract you
Yeah.
or whatever. Think of a happy thought. Think of all the lovely times that you and Anita had together. You
Yeah.
know?
And there's so many well-meaning people that
That's 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 not allowing you to feel it. That's that's trying to take that experience. So many well-meaning people.
we're
We're
back,
back, are
or
we? We're back. We're back. So you go ahead. You were saying, Vinny, and that.
are we here? Is it okay
We're here. I
now?
can hear you. I can hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
moving well. I'm not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just took a wee. It took a wee freeze there.
A bit sticky.
Yeah, how I experienced our conversation was more of an invitation than a soothing or anything, and that invitation to that it's okay to be with and sit with and feel whatever it is that's going on. And when I think back over the experience, there was things that I didn't want to feel, that I actually thought maybe I shouldn't be feeling, or that I remember talking lots about this idea that I should be further on. I should be further on in this. Why am I back feeling this thing again? And the biggest lesson, I guess, that I've had over the past, one of the biggest lessons that I've had over the past 3 years is that whatever is showing up for me in the moment is what's showing up for me in the moment. And it's welcome and it's there and it doesn't need to be any different. It doesn't need to be something else. And um that was one of the most powerful lessons that I kept, and I still do keep revisiting, is that whatever's here, it's welcome and it's okay. Because I think even as men and just as people, we just put so much pressure on ourselves to be okay, that we should be okay, that life should be different somewhat than what we're experiencing. But life can't be anything else than what it is in the moment. And the more that we can, it's probably entering into that presence bit a little bit, the more that we can be present with what actually is and not our perception of what should be or what meaning we're attaching to something, or whatever it is, the more that we can just be with reality and accept it and welcome it, the more I find in my experience that emotion and life can move and flow rather than being stuck and stagnant.
And when you said that so eloquently, and that's when it gets really, really easy. That, you know, that's like, so just to be with whatever's there, you know, I'm angry right now. Okay, then just be angry. Oh, but I'm afraid of being angry. Okay, well then just notice the fear. But I hate fear. Okay, so just notice that you hate fear. Ah, but I'm ashamed of hating fear. Okay, well then just notice the shame. Uh, do you know what I mean? You kind of get really playful with it, and you can get, yeah. So just notice that then. But I don't want to notice it. Well, then just notice that you don't want to notice it. Uh, oh, you're really pissing me off now. Yeah, so just notice that you're pissed off. Uh, and you're right. It doesn't. Quite often we're trying to get. I don't want to feel that or that or that or that or that or that or that, because what it should be feeling is that one over there.
Yeah, you're making me
You
laugh.
know,
It's
and
like,
you
yeah,
think, well,
digging frantically for the thing.
just yeah, yeah. You're like, no, no, feel the thing that's there. Don't worry about the thing that you think you should be feeling. What is it that you're actually feeling?
Yeah,
Just feel that then.
yeah.
You know, just and it does get you can be playful about this work as well. You can't get playful and just be with whatever's there. You know, I'm
Mm,
afraid to be sad, so just notice the fear. Just
mm.
be with the fear,
I think
because
fear is a
that's what's
massive
present.
one for, the guys in the community, and I guess people in general. I don't want to just keep on saying about the guys in the community, but my experience is there's quite a lot of people that I've worked with that are absolutely petrified and afraid to think or dig into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes people haven't had an awful lot of um I'm just going to call it major trauma, like huge big life events
Mm-hmm.
happen to them, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's people I've worked with felt like I've had a really happy, great upbringing, but I'm afraid to look back there
Mm-hmm.
just in case.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have this fear, that's my question. I'm of the belief in the work that I do, in order to, I love to see people creating their life, a life that's aligned to who they are, create a life that they really want, to dream big dreams and to go after goals and, all that kind of stuff. I love that. That's what I'm about. But in order to get there, I believe you have to revisit the past and you have to unlearn and rediscover or uncover who you are and learn about your patterns and understand this and forgiveness and all that kind of jazz. So to move forward, you need to look back and the how do you move past the fear? How do you move past the fear of going deep into your past?
Again, Finley, that's learned, and I was with a client last week, earlier this week maybe, and I said something, and you know, sometimes when you're working with people, well, we'll all know this, everyone listening to this, when you say something, oh, that's really good what I just said. I must write that down, you know. Uh, and what I said was, it just came out of my mouth. You know, not getting too special. I didn't say it, but it was said through me. But uh, the fear of feeling is more often than not bigger than the feeling of fear. Yeah. So, and when we learn, and again, this is when so people work with you and I and work in these environments, we're taking people safely, securely, compassionately, kindly into that fear so that they can go, ah, it's not really that bad. I thought it was going to be much worse, you know, and they might shed a few tears, they might, whatever, and then they go, all right, okay, was that it? I said, yeah, that was it. Yeah, you felt it. You felt it, and they learn that the thing that they're afraid of isn't really. isn't really that scary,
Mm.
you know. Or even if it is big, they'll live. You know, if you need to roll around the floor and grieve for 2 hours a week, whatever, you know, you need to cry in your bed for an hour. Yeah, it'll feel a bit shitty, but you'll be all right. You know, you'll survive. You'll live. Uh, and helping people to learn that, helping people to understand that they can feel it, they will be able to manage, they can cope with it, they will survive, they will be okay. Again, it's just a learned process. That's how you learn, by saying, okay, well, this thing that I'm avoiding seems to be an issue in my life, so I can keep avoiding it, and no shame in that. That's what you decide to do. No judgment in that. I can keep avoiding it, or I can decide to move towards it.
Mm.
I can decide to feel this and work my way through this. And yeah, just learning a little bit at a time. You know, do you want to feel a little bit? Come back out. Feel another little bit. Come back out. And just get used to that, going in and feeling that thing that you believe that you're really afraid of. And it's never as bad. There's a great I think it was the Buddha said, Vinty, it's not feeling our emotions that makes us suffer. It's trying to resist feeling our emotions that makes us suffer.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, for me, that's true. It's not the feeling of sadness or fear. It's the avoidance of them that makes us suffer. It's the avoidance of them that drives us to coping mechanisms and addictive behaviors and
Yeah.
you know. So feeling it under the help of a professional, or just with a compassionate witness, a compassionate friend, you know, to be allowed to feel it, and you'll go into it and you'll come out of it and go, yeah, it was all right.
Mm. I like that idea of, you know, slowly going as far as you're comfortable, like slowly entering into this stuff. Because if you're being so conditioned not to feel, then it can be a scary thing. And
Yeah.
to go in, to use, I call this your word now, to go in compassionately with yourself,
Mhm.
for yourself on this journey, and to I guess have the courage, because I think it is courageous to decide to heal from your past, you know,
Massive.
to face and to look back and to go in and to experience and feel all of that kind of stuff. It's hugely courageous. And so I guess, um just with the guys listening, you know, with the tools and techniques that we share in the community, but also what Kev has shared tonight in terms of connecting with your body and going on that inner journey of discovering your triggers and your patterns and why you behave the way you behave, you know, to be compassionate and take your time with the process. There's nowhere that you need to be. There's no final destination really, and it's about, for me, it's about having the commitment to allow your true self to come forward and being committed to this ongoing journey. Like I've said to all you guys before, this is a life journey. It's not a, you know, join a program and fix yourself in 6 days. If any program offers you that, then stay away from it. this this it this is a life journey of experience, of going inwards, figuring things out, and coming to fresh realizations and insights. And there's one, and just, I know we've spoke for 2 hours already, Kev, but there's
Cheers.
something that keeps going on in my head, so I wanna ask it, and it's around. I think it'd be really useful for the guys in particular with relationships, and it's around acknowledging emotions in other people. And you'd mentioned this, that, you know, emotions aren't wrong. And kind of reflecting back on my early years of being married and, you know, arguments and that kind of stuff, and maybe being in an argument and Anita was feeling a certain way, and I'm just like, what the heck? Why are you feeling like that for? That's nonsense. And I
Mhm.
think it's something that we can all identify with in some shape or form, of being in a situation and someone's saying, I'm angry at that, or I'm upset at you, or, and find it difficult to acknowledge that, you know, well, I don't know why you'd be upset at that. How can we how can we be better at acknowledging the emotion in other people, um particularly our significant others and our partners and our wives and all that?
Mm. You know, Wendy, the clue or the answer is almost in the question. By acknowledging the emotions of other people, and by not personifying that, because you're angry, I'm making that mean something about me. I have to get defensive, or I have to get, I have to, be able to say, okay, I get it that you're angry about that. That wasn't my intention. I'm not even sorry that you're angry about that. But it's okay that you're angry. You want to talk about it? And there's a lovely thing, Venti, called non-violent communication. Marshall Rosenberg written loads of books on non-violent communication. It's his modality. And non-violent communication is really highly attuned emotional language. So when someone is angry, how do I feel? Not what should they do. How people say, hey, I feel quite sad that you're angry, or I feel angry too. Should we maybe take a few minutes and come back to this in a while? That's really psychologically mature. Angry. I also now recognize that I'm angry. Maybe we should take a few minutes, or 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, or a day, and speak about this tomorrow. Because if we speak about this now, when we're both emotionally charged, we're going to say things that aren't true, that we regret, you know. So in that, you're giving each other the space to say, yeah, I get that you're angry. I'm angry too. Maybe we should just give each other a bit of space.
Yeah, there's an awareness of what I'm hearing is there's an awareness of what's happening within you, within me. And there's an
Yeah.
acceptance of the feeling of the other person. And I think that was really, I guess it was a loaded question or a pointed question, because I've struggled in the past when people deny my own feelings. When people have told me that I shouldn't be feeling a certain way.
Mhm.
And I love that understanding that feelings aren't wrong. Whatever you're feeling, whatever someone is feeling, they're feeling that. It's their response to the situation. And I think the crux of it is how we manage our own meaning that we're attaching to that experience.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I suppose that you're inviting a little humanity into a situation, and an acceptance that we are humans, we get triggered, we get angry, we get sad, we get upset, we get things wrong, we make mistakes, we mess up, we do all those things. I do them, you do them, our spouses, partners, husbands, friends, wives do them. And if we can say, yeah, okay, I can see why you'd be angry about that, and I really think when we invite that into, when we allow people, not even allow, so that's the wrong word, it's as if we're giving people permission, but when we accept that people can get angry or upset or sad and express that, quite often we get the same level of humanity back. We'll get back with someone, even when they're angry, when you recognize that they're angry, say, yeah, I can see that you're really angry. You'll almost get humanity through their anger back at you, and I say, yeah, well, thanks for recognizing I'm angry. And there's a level of humanity in that they've been accepted, and that it's okay, and maybe we'll come back to it, talk about it tomorrow, and then sometimes we have to say our sorries and make our apologies,
Yeah.
And say, yeah, you're right, I messed up.
Yeah.
I said I'd be home at 5 and I didn't get home at 8. I didn't phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
hear you.
one of the biggest things that I learned was having a willingness to have a conversation and do my best to understand Anita's perspective. So I wasn't entering into a conversation to try and defend my position, but I was entering into a conversation to understand her perspective, her way of seeing things. And, sometimes I'm lying, the majority of a lot of the time, it was once I understood her perspective and I was not allowing myself to get into victim mode of, she or being triggered by her, pointing out some home truths, put it that way, that I was able to accept that actually my behavior was wrong. I chose the wrong thing to say. I didn't come home on time, whatever it might be, and then being able to apologize quite rightly for that stuff. But I think it's when it comes to that relationship with other people, it's the willingness to understand the other's perspective and to be less in defensive mode that really, I guess, certainly helped our relationship. And I think that's probably where, some of our biggest arguments perhaps came from was, when I was coming in defending my position, not being willing to understand what was going on in Anita's perspective or Anita's world, and allowing myself to be, or not even allowing myself, being triggered by feeling of inadequacy or feeling like I've let her down. And what did that mean? Well, it means I'm not a good enough husband, and all that stuff is just firing off and going off, and
Yeah.
everything that you've talked about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right, because when do we defend ourselves in general?
In general,
when we perceive that we're being attacked.
Yeah.
And so that's working with that perception. I perceive I'm being attacked, so I need to defend myself. So if we can work with that perception, is my perception right? Am I being attacked? Or might there be something else going on here? Might she actually be angry because the dinner's burnt? We were meant to go out at 8 o'clock and I didn't get home till 9. So we're working with the perception. My perception is she's attacking me. Well, what else might be going on? Is that perception true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it real? Are you with your in the present self?
Yeah.
Are you with your in your present self, or are you perceiving that you're being attacked? And are you in your 4-year-old self?
Yeah. I think relationships does have the ability to be able to be a great mirror in our lives, for sure. So I guess that's a bit of an encouragement for any of the guys watching this. If you're being triggered in a relationship quite a lot, and there's a lot of high emotions or arguments even going on, then it's our ability even to be able to see those as an invitation to figure out what's going on for us, and to be able to take some time to think these things through. Kev, just very, very conscious of time right now. So thanks so much for all of your insight and all of your input. We could, as we've done many times before, talk for 3-4 hours, and but we won't do that this evening. Last kind of, I guess, last question. What would be one of the things that we teach in the community is specific tools that you can use to be able to manage your emotional state, as we call it. What would be something that you could offer? You've offered so much tonight that the guys can take away and implement and use and think about. Is there a particular tool, a way of thinking, a technique, or something that you could offer the guys as a way of being able to enter into what you talked about, the present moment, self-awareness, the present awareness?
I'm going to talk about this for 3 hours on its own.
I know.
Like breathing's one. I mean, I'm a big advocate for meditation and mindfulness. The art of pause and just slowing down and all of those things. But if you can get a little mantra into your head, and that mantra for me is, what is happening for me right now? So if you can just say that to yourself at various points in the day, when you're in the shower, when you're on the loo, when you're speaking to your partner, when you're dealing with your kids, what is happening for me right now? When you're angry with the other driver, when your wife forgets to put milk in your coffee, when you're under pressure at work, when you have to meet a deadline, when whatever is happening in your life, what is happening for me right now is a great thing to be asking yourself.
Amazing.
And I mean in that just to quantify or qualify the answer, not a lot of story. I mean, yeah, my chest is tight, or my stomach's flipping over, or my butt cheeks are clenched, or my fists are clenched, or my jaw, that sort of very simple terms. I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm tense, my tummy is spiky, my breath is short. So these aren't big intellectual answers. These are just, I'm sweaty, I'm cold. What is happening for me right now?
Amazing. Kev, how can the guys get in contact with you, find you? Are you a social media person?
Yeah. Well, I was up until a few days ago, and then I just ditched all my social media. So just stepped away, only for a while. I'm on a social media break.
Yeah.
They will find me at my website, which is www.in-myd.com. In-mind with a y.com. They'll get me on there. And they'll also I'm never too far from you in a message or an email or a WhatsApp or whatever. So they'll get to me through you at any point.
Excellent. Kev, thanks so much for all your wisdom, all your insight. Really, really enjoyed our conversation. And I'm sure the guys listening to this will get so much out of it too. So really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being with us. And you never know, maybe you'll be back again.
Would love to, and definitely next time you're going up the mountains, I'd like to make that happen as well. So
yeah, well, I'll tell you the date for that once I hit stop here. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Adios. All the best.
Take care, everyone.
And see you in the next podcast. Adios.